Hey YouTube, so this video is for anyone that wants to upgrade their L200 head unit in their, I think 2013 onwards head units. So they're the ones that look like this. And if they do, you should be able to, with a little bit of fiddling around, convert them to the newer type. And the main reason I can see that you would want to do that would be to get Apple Carplay and Android Auto onto your head unit. So in order to do that, you're going to need to go shopping for a few cables and adapters, because basically you need to take the DAB aerial signal, which currently goes into like a DAB ECU box kind of by your knee if you are a right-hand drive car. Now that is here, as shown in the image. The easiest way to get to that, though, I mean for me anyway, was just to reach down after prying off the cover that goes around the two air blowers and the radio itself. It's just to pry that away, and then you can reach down and find it down there. It's fairly obvious. It has a white plug on it. You need to extend that DAB aerial because it's not long enough to reach the back of the new unit you're going to put in, so you can just buy a simple extension cable that looks like this on screen. I'm going to put some links to these in the description, but crucially, because the links might die or the sellers might stop selling them, you have to find one that basically looks like this. It goes by the name a FAKRA cable, which is spelt F-A-K-R-A. I believe that is the type of plug specific, so that is the one that you're going to need for this. Okay, so the next thing you're going to need to do is looking at this circuit diagram here. As you can see, when we zoom into this area, you need to remove the factory microphone's pins from the plug that they currently go into. Now, as it stands with the old units, the microphone goes into like a separate module that handles Bluetooth and the hands-free microphone. Now the thing about this is it's a little bit of a pain in the neck to get it out, and this is kind of the part of the job that's a little harder. It's going to require you to be a little handy with soldering, and so what you need to do is identify these three pins on the plug that goes into here. Now, you basically need to take pins, as you can see, 14, 28, and then 27 and 17, according to the circuit diagram. Now, what I did is just take the pins out of the plug, because I use them again later. So I remove the pins from that plug. You can just do that with a pick inside them and then pull the pins back out of the plug. I cut them off, stripped the wire, tinned it, and then was ready to use a patch lead that I made just with some shield and patch cable. You could also use bell wire or anything else, but I had some patch cable lying around. So I took 14 and 28, which is mic positive and mic negative, and took that into the patch lead, and then I combined together the shield and the earth into one on the patch cable, or would have been fine with bell wire, onto a separate pin. So I'm only carrying across 3 pins from basically that area back up to where the head unit will be. So looking at the plug here, you'll see this is the plug that goes into the hands-free unit where you need to pull out the microphone wires. It's on the bottom arrow, it's the white, grey and black that you're going to need, and then on the top arrow it's the other black up there that you're going to need. So the actual colours relate to the lower one, the bottom arrow one. The black is the mic positive, the white is the mic negative, and then the grey wire is the ground. And then the top arrow is the other black up there, that's another ground. So I just joined those two. When I took the actual pins out of that plug, I then joined the black and the grey together, and then they're both ground and shield. And then I've just got the mic positive on the other black one and the white one, and those become my kind of mic positive and negative that I then carry over to the other plug. And I just used a meter of like patch cable for this, and that works just great. Okay, so assuming you've got all those cables onto a patch, you then need to bring them up to where the head unit's going to be that it's going to plug into. Now what I did was I used the pins that I cut off the actual cables underneath the glove box. I soldered them to the cable, the patch cable that I made at the other end. So basically I had 3 loose pins that could be pushed onto the terminals at the back. Now you could make this a lot easier if you actually got hold of the original loom and then got hold of the plug. That's kind of the easier way to do it, because obviously then you can just push those pins into the correct holes in the new plug and you're going to be away. But I had to push them in and do something else, which is using hot glue and stuff, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But as you can see, what you need to do is get the mic positive in pin 64, mic negative in pin 63, and then it's important to get the ground, and you've got the shield in 57. So I realised in 56, sorry, you got the ground and then the other one in 57. It's the 57 that is the important one. You don't actually need to put anything in pin 56, because if it's not grounded, that's kind of the thing that will tell the unit it hasn't got a mic plugged into it. That is the point where it's important to have something in it. If that's not grounded, the thing will just say like your microphone is not plugged in. Even if the positive and negative are plugged in, it would think it's not plugged in. So that is an important step. Okay, so to get to the existing hands-free module, you're going to need to open up the glove box, and then on the side here there's this little kind of almost like a shock absorber, a little plasticky guy. You just need to pull that off this way in that direction. So you just pull that off and then you let these tabs out to get the glove box out. So there we are, the glove box is down, and then up behind here, just here is where the module was. I've since removed mine, but yeah, that's where the module sits. It has the USB plug going into it and also this plug here. Now this plug here is the one in question that you need to get the wires from for the microphone. So you should be able to see, if I just remove it, that here is where you've got my patch lead. So I've soldered into that. Can show you there. So that's where those cables are, and I've soldered into those, heat shrinked it all and zip tied it, and then that plug is now redundant. So that there's actually a little bracket here, and you can just tuck all of that away into there, and that's nice and neat. The USB cable obviously we're going to remove, but that's how you get to that bit. Right, so then you've got to remove the actual radio itself. To do that, I just use a bicycle tire remover. You can get like professional trim tools, but they seem to cost slightly silly money, so I've got these anyway. The best thing to do is kind of start around the bottom here, and you just kind of work just under there, and then you can pry this whole thing away as one. It comes away like this. You want to pull it like that. Okay, yeah, so once you've pried that, you just worked your way around, it should pull away, and it comes away like this. And then behind here, you have the multi-pin plug, which you just need to unplug. That's for the heating system. So that one, just got a little tab underneath it. And it's a little tab, you reach your finger under there, push in the tab, and that should just then pull out. Like so. So from then, you can then unscrew these 4 screws, which hold the head unit in. Obviously, I've already got the new head unit in now. But yeah, these 4, one in there and one up here, same over that side, and then that head unit comes out. That's then when you can do the wiring. So in here is where I was talking about where you can get to the DAB aerial. So if you look in there underneath, you can see there is a green and white blob in there. So you can, it kind of looks further because I'm on wide angle here. So if I put it in like that, you can reach in there and get to that without too much difficulty. And the other thing you can do is just reach under here. You can reach your hand up and get to that. Not too difficult. Just so that's where the DAB aerial, the existing one, plugs into a module down there, and you just unplug it from there and plug in that extension cable, and the extension cable then comes up to here to go in your new head unit. Now for the microphone socket, I've then filled that area with hot glue, basically just to stabilize those pins when it gets pushed back in. And I'm also going to zip tie it to another cable just to strain relief it a bit. I think it probably would have been fine with just the pins just pushed in over the top of the pins, but this is going to mean that it's rock solid. Now it might seem a bit drastic, but the bottom of this is the hot glue is not liquid enough to drizzle through, and you know, should I ever need to change this, it's really easy to pick the hot glue out. It'd only be a 5-minute job. You could just cut this off, take it in a workshop or a garage, just pick out the hot glue, and then you could start again. It wouldn't be the end of the world. Another thing is, if you want to maintain the original fascia for the USB, then this is the plug that goes into the back of it. The easiest thing to do to connect this with the other USB is just to cut it. Now the wires that you see inside here are labeled like this. So you've got yeah, black, brown, purple, and red. So these correspond to, you know, if you use the same one that I did for USB, you'll find that the order that they run in on the USB is like this. So black at the far left, and then you've got brown, purple, and then red over here. So your 2 power lines are either side, and your 2 data lines are in the middle. Okay, so for the USB, again, if you haven't got the loom, and if you did have the loom, you're going to have that like USB and HDMI port that you can install underneath. But if you're not buying the loom, you're just buying the head unit by itself. There's a good reason to buy the head unit by itself, because you can really pick one up pretty damn cheap by itself. Whereas if you're trying to get all the wiring behind it, there are loads of breakers and stuff who kind of know that people want to do this, and they charge a fortune for the loom and everything else. So what you're going to need to do is buy this cable, and this cable is called like a Subaru USB cable. So that's Subaru, the car make. It kind of looks like this, and a close-up of the plug looks like this. And basically, yeah, it's as close as you can get to the right thing. I couldn't find anything that was the right thing. I feel like Kenwood has intentionally made this difficult and basically used things that are semi-standard and then kind of made it more difficult. So there's another step, which is here. Okay, so when you're at the stage of trying to fit the USBs, with that plug that I talked about that you're going to need, you then basically, although it's slightly crude, these 2 little edges here, you just want to lift your screwdriver in there and snap them away. That's what prevents you from getting that in. There's 2 little metal tabs in here, and you can just slightly push at those, and if you push at them, that plug will then fit. It's not ideal, but that's what happens if you don't have the loom for this. Now, as for the GPS antenna, this particular plug that comes here, this type of GPS antenna. Now, this is good, but because it's square, the middle of it is square, but it doesn't actually, this plug doesn't actually go into that. This is proprietary, the green one. So again, unless you have the loom from the donor car or from whatever place you bought it all from, you will then need to remove the outer shell of this guy, which you can do. You see inside there, just above where the dark grey bit is, there's a tab. If you reach inside there and push that tab up, you'll be able to pull the middle of this out, revealing basically that, which is just the shield and the coax pin in the middle. Now this is absolutely no different to having the plastic bit around it. You just push that into the middle of there and it will click in just fine. Everything else, you've got the extension lead for the DAB, FM. This is the reverse camera, and then the harness. That all just goes in just as you'd expect. And from there, it all works. Now, because I didn't have the plug, what I've done is use the donor pins, plug them in. You've got the mic positive and mic negative, and those are on pin 64 and 63 for positive and negative respectively. And you only need to go into 57 to actually get it to work. Pin 57. 56 is the shield ground, but you don't actually need that. The mic sounds fine. It's shielded and it's earthed anyway. But if that one isn't earthed there, if it's not plugged into that one, it won't work, as in the head unit will say that there's a problem. And that's pretty much it. So once you plug all that stuff back in, you should be there. You've got your original aerial with that grey plastic bit removed, put in. You have your FM aerial plugged in. You've got your 2 harness wires plugged in. You have your reverse camera plugged in. And then you've got your DAB extension plugged in. That should all work fine. And then finally, the last piece in the puzzle is you've got the original factory microphone with the patch cable wired in. At this point, you can actually just full-on remove the old Bluetooth module. You've already used the USB cable to do this, so you can actually just unclip that from inside there and remove that. I like the factory USB socket on the front, hence why I kept that. There would be a way of doing the HDMI. I might look at doing that in the future, although I don't really have a need to get HDMI in. I just really wanted CarPlay on this car. That was kind of my reason for doing it. It wasn't too difficult bringing that across, and I suppose you would make life a little easier if you had the loom, but you're still at the end of the day going to have to cut and solder the wires that currently go into the old hands-free unit. So it's still going to be a bit of a job with soldering, and if you're comfortable with it, I would say it's no more difficult to not bother with buying all the cables. It saved me a fortune. I managed to get my head unit for about 200 odd quid, and other than that, a couple of Amazon purchases for a few cables, literally just the USB cable and the DAB extension, which I think added up to about 12 quid, and I was all done. It looks like I should sell the old one for probably more than I bought this one for, so I feel pretty good about it all in. And yeah, works a treat, works just the same as factory, and yeah, feeling good about it. So any questions, feel free just to ask. There's obviously a lot of information here. Sorry it's kind of rambling and not well put together. Sorry some of the camera work shoddy, but it should just about explain it. Cheers then, bye bye.